You think mass is heavy. You imagine gravity as a pull, an invisible hand reaching across empty space. You picture space as a stage, flat, passive. Objects move inside it. You imagine planets tugging on each other through nothing. You imagine Einstein just changed the math. Same picture, better equations. That picture feels obvious. So obvious you stop noticing it. You think mass sits in space, like furniture in a room. You think space is just there, waiting to be occupied. This is the picture you carry without questioning. It works until it doesn't, because if mass really just pulled, there would be no reason for space itself to do anything at all. And yet, it does. This is not a tweak to gravity. It is not a clever metaphor. It is a rejection of the stage itself. If space can bend, then it was never a container to begin with, and that should bother you. You think space is empty. You think it is just there, a backdrop for events. You think it is passive. Everywhere you look, this idea is reinforced. A ball rolls across the floor. A planet orbits a star. You picture them moving inside something that does nothing. That something is space. A flat, unchanging stage. A silent spectator. Even physics textbooks encourage this view. Diagrams show objects in neat grids, coordinates, arrows. You measure motion inside this framework. You forget to question the framework itself. You forget that a stage is an assumption. You imagine empty space as neutral. But stop and think, what does empty really mean? If it truly were nothing, how could anything move? How could forces propagate? How could light even travel? You shrug, because intuition says, of course it can. Space is just there. This is wrong, because when you picture space as a passive arena, you are sneaking in assumption. You assume that geometry, straight lines, distances, directions exists independently of what's inside it. You assume that the universe's backdrop is constant, eternal, universal. You assume that. Space is inert, a neutral vacuum that never interferes with motion. And yet, every time you watch an apple fall, every time you trace a planet's path, this picture quietly fails. What if space is not a stage at all? What if the floor itself bends under the weight of objects? Not metaphorically, not in a drawing, but literally. The straight lines you take for granted, the ones you imagine as absolute, might not be straight at all. You carry this stage picture without realizing it. It is invisible. It is unquestioned. It shapes your thinking so profoundly that even when told about curved space-time, your mind struggles to accept it, because you can't see the stage. You only see the actors. And the stage, you think, does nothing. But the stage is wrong. It does something. Everything. And once you notice this, the ground beneath your intuition starts to tilt. You think gravity pulls. You imagine invisible hands tugging planets, apples, moons, everything. You imagine Earth reaching across empty space to drag objects downward. That image feels obvious. It has worked for centuries. Calculations match observations. Newton's law is precise, predictive, reliable. And yet, it explains nothing. Think about it. How can something pull across nothing? How can one object influence another without any medium connecting them? Newton admitted it was mysterious. He called it action at a distance. He accepted the calculations but had no story to tell. You've been taught to ignore that discomfort. Formulas work, so the picture is good enough. You assume the universe is polite. That empty space can carry forces silently. That pulling can happen without cause. This is wrong, because a force implies interaction. A tug implies a responder. But in Newtonian gravity, the responder is absent. The stage remains inert. The hands are invisible. There is no mechanism, just an equation. You might argue, well, it works. And yes, it does. For centuries, predictions were accurate, but working equations do not equal understanding. They are scaffolding, not architecture. They hide a deeper truth. Imagine two planets orbiting each other. In your mind, each is pulling on the other. But consider, what if the tug is not in the planets at all, but in the space around them? What if the paths they follow are dictated not by invisible pulls, but by the very geometry of their surroundings? You are uncomfortable now. Good, you should be. Because intuition tells you mass pulls, motion is forced, straight lines remain straight. But this intuition is built on a stage that doesn't exist. Newton's picture is a calculation tool. It predicts orbits. It predicts tides. It predicts planetary motion with astonishing accuracy. But it does not explain the why, not really. And the moment you notice that, the ground shifts again. The idea of pulling across empty space, a core belief about how the universe works, begins to crumble. Because once you stop thinking of gravity as a force, you have to stop thinking of space as passive. And once that happens, everything changes. You think relativity is just about clocks and trains. You imagine time slowing down only when you move fast. You imagine lengths contracting, light bending, but space itself remaining untouched. That is the comfortable picture. It seems to respect your intuition. Space is still the stage. Objects move. Light travels. Time flows. Relativity tweaks the actors, but the stage stays the same. This is wrong. Einstein could not accept it, because if the stage is inert, the universe is inconsistent. If space doesn't respond, then gravity, a force he already doubted cannot fit within relativity. The equations of relativity demand a universe where nothing stands still. Not matter, not energy, not even the geometry itself. Imagine two massive objects moving near each other at high speeds. In classical thinking, each follows the old straight lines of space. Gravity tugs them, light bends, time dilates, but the canvas beneath remains flat. Einstein saw a problem, a conflict, because relativity doesn't just care about motion, it cares about the structure of space-time. Distances, durations, directions, they are not fixed. They are not passive. They are malleable, intertwined with the energy and momentum of matter itself. You feel uneasy. You should, because this insight destroys the separation you've always assumed matter in space, space as a stage. In reality, the presence of mass and energy must influence the geometry of space-time. Otherwise, the laws of physics collapse into contradictions. It is not arbitrary. It is not a poetic metaphor. The universe insists on it. Einstein did not decide whimsically that space should bend. He was forced into it. Logical pressure, mathematical consistency, and the relentless failure of the force picture cornered him. The old Newtonian intuition could not survive. So he asked a radical question. What if the stage itself participates? And suddenly the comfortable picture you've been carrying is gone. The straight lines you trust, the empty void you imagine, it is all negotiable, all contingent. From here, the path becomes unfamiliar. You are no longer just observing matter moving. You are witnessing matter sculpting the very arena in which it moves. You think of space as nothing. You think of geometry as abstract, untouchable, purely mathematical. You think lines are straight because your mind defines them that way, not because reality says so. That is the comfortable assumption. Flat grids, rulers, and coordinates convince you that the stage is neutral, universal, eternal, that nothingness cannot act, cannot resist, cannot bend. This is wrong, because space is not neutral. Space is not empty. Space is physical. It has properties. It stretches. It contracts. It curves. It reacts to what exists within it. It is not a canvas you paint upon. It is a medium that participates. Imagine a trampoline. Place a heavy ball in the center. The fabric sinks. Roll a marble across the surface. It curves around the depression. No one is pulling it. No hidden string. The motion arises naturally from the shape of the surface itself. Now, remove the trampoline. Replace it with your invisible empty space. You still expect planets to orbit, light to bend, apples to fall straight down. And yet, without a stage that can bend, without space responding, there is no explanation. Motion becomes arbitrary. Straight lines remain hypothetical. Einstein realized this. Space is not just where things happen. Space is what happens. It is dynamic. It has tension. It has curvature. It carries information about mass, about energy, about motion. This changes everything. The distinction between object and arena collapses. The void is no longer passive. Geometry is no longer abstract. Straight lines are only straight until the universe tells them to bend. You might resist this. It is hard to see. You can't measure it with a ruler at your desk. You can't perceive it with your eyes. And yet, every orbit, every gravitational lens, every ripple in space-time confirms it. Space reacts. Space participates. Space is alive with influence. From this perspective, Newton's pull feels childish, almost quaint. The old idea of a stage immutable, neutral, separate, crumbles under the weight of this simple, brutal truth. The arena itself is a player. And once you accept this, you start to see motion differently. Straight paths are illusions. Falling is not a pull. Orbits are not compelled. Light curves because the road it travels bends beneath it. All direction, all movement, all causality is embedded in this responsive, malleable geometry. This is the moment your intuition starts to unravel. Space is no longer empty. It has substance, it has power, and it cannot be ignored. You think objects move because something pushes or pulls them. You think falling means being dragged. You think orbiting means a force is tugging at every instant. That is how the world feels obvious. A dropped apple accelerates downward. The moon circles Earth. Gravity pulls. Force explains everything. This is wrong because once space itself bends, motion no longer requires an external tug. Objects follow the curves already written into the geometry of their surroundings. The paths are determined not by invisible strings, but by the stage itself, by the way the arena twists and stretches. Imagine again the trampoline. You roll a marble along a curved surface. No one touches it. No one pulls it. Yet its trajectory bends naturally. It follows the path dictated by the surface's shape. The motion feels compelled, but the cause is not a force. It is geometry. Now imagine planets, stars, light. The paths you see are similar. No hand is dragging Mercury around the sun. No invisible strings pull photons past galaxies. Motion conforms to the curves in space-time itself. Straight lines, once absolute, are no longer straight. They are geodesics, paths that are straight only relative to the space that contains them. An object in free fall is not being forced. It is moving along the natural line laid out by the universe's fabric. This unravels your deepest intuition. Falling does not require cause. Orbiting does not require a push. Motion itself is a response, a surrender to the shape of the stage, not a reaction to a hand pulling it along. You might feel disoriented. You should. You are accustomed to imagining forces as the origin of all movement. But in curved space, the origin is geometry. The paths are pre-written by the way mass bends space. The universe no longer needs tethers or invisible strings. And the unsettling truth is this: you are in free fall yourself right now. The world around you seems solid. Gravity seems like a pull. But at the deepest level, your motion is dictated by space-time, not by any force dragging you down. This is not metaphor. It is literal. And once you accept it, The Newtonian intuition motion requires force starts to crumble. Universe moves differently than you imagined. And your mind, still clinging to pulling and pushing, feels the weight of that discrepancy. You think mass is just stuff. Heavy, dense, occupying space. You think it moves through a neutral void, obeying forces, but leaving the arena untouched. That is the comfortable picture. It seems inevitable. Matter sits. Matter moves. Space remains inert. This is wrong, because once you accept that motion follows geometry, something startling happens. Mass cannot avoid shaping that geometry. It has no choice. Its presence alone distorts the arena it inhabits. Imagine placing a bowling ball on a trampoline. The fabric sags. No force is applied beyond the weight. The surface reacts automatically. Mass does not need to decide to bend the fabric. Its mere existence does it. In the universe, the trampoline is space-time. The bowling balls are planets, stars, galaxies. The depression is curvature. This is not metaphorical. This is literal physics. Energy and momentum dictate the shape of space-time. Geometry and mass are inseparable. You might resist. You think, why must space bend? Why can't it just sit there? Because if it didn't, physics fails. Paths of planets would make no sense. Light would travel straight where it should bend. Gravity would be inconsistent. The equations of relativity demand it. The universe enforces it. Every kilogram, every joule, every particle contributes. The cosmos cannot ignore mass. Space cannot ignore presence. Geometry responds, bends, stretches, and curves not because someone tells it to, but because that is the only way the universe maintains consistency. Think of it like this. Imagine you remove the curvature. Everything collapses. Orbits break. Light refuses its path. The universe becomes illogical, incoherent. To exist, mass must shape space. There is no other option. This is profound. Mass is not merely an occupant. It is a sculptor. And space is not merely a stage. It is clay. Motion, light. Time all arise from this continuous dance between matter and geometry. At this level, pull is meaningless. Force is redundant. Mass bending space is not an arbitrary law. It is an inevitable consequence. The stage bends because it must. Objects move as they must. Reality enforces its own rules through the intimate link between geometry and mass. This is the moment your intuition is dismantled completely. Space is not passive. Motion is not forced. Mass shapes the very fabric of existence. And you are witnessing the universe behaving exactly as it must. You think the universe has a backdrop. You think there is a where and a when independent of what happens. You imagine objects performing on a silent stage, the cosmos watching without interference. This is wrong, because the stage does not exist. Space is not a container. Time is not a river flowing uniformly for all. Geometry, duration, direction, they are inseparable from the matter that fills them. The universe is not a theater. It is a performance and a stage all at once, created continuously by the actors themselves. Imagine a cosmos where every planet, every photon, every speck of energy shapes the paths of all others. There is no absolute up or down. No universal now. Straight lines bend. Clocks tick differently. Distances stretch and contract. Every event is relational. Nothing floats freely. Nothing moves independently. You might feel vertigo. Good. This discomfort is the signal that your deepest intuitions have been dismantled. You are used to thinking of reality as a collection of things in space. Now, space itself is alive, responsive, sculpted by mass and energy. You cannot separate the stage from the play. Einstein's universe offers no neutral vantage point. Observation, motion, causality, they all emerge from the network of interactions between geometry and mass. The cosmos is a fabric woven from its contents, constantly bending, flexing, and shaping itself. And in this realization comes awe, not because everything is explained, not because you can hold it in your mind, but because the universe is far stranger, far more intimate than intuition ever suggested. Space and matter, motion and time, they are not separate. They are facets of the same living, dynamic entity. You are no longer in a universe that waits silently while events unfold. You are inside a universe that participates in every event. A universe without a stage. A universe that bends. A universe that astonishes. And that is the world mass demands. That is the universe Einstein revealed. That is reality as close as your mind can grasp it, and yet as infinite as it refuses to be fully captured.